Welcome to Dave and Dharm Demystify, a FinTech Futures podcast, helping make sense of the world of FinTech and digital finance. Please sit back and listen as the two Ds take a subject and discuss it to make it clearer and easier to understand.
Demystify.
Welcome to the Dave and Dharm Demystify show, and this week we're going to get an update on Monument Bank because we did have them a long time ago. So I'm very pleased to say they're still around, which is great news. And speaking on behalf of Monument, who better than Steve Brittain? Welcome, Steve.
Thank you very much, Dharm. Great to see you. And I'm the CEO of Monument Technology.
Well, as you've kind of mentioned it now, then we should probably, this is a change from before, right? Because it was just Monument Bank.
Yeah, that's right. So for those that aren't aware of the story, a quick recap. We started off life as a new bank, going through an application process back in 2019. We launched in late 2021. Monument Bank, obviously a new digital bank for the mass affluent. And it's growing great guns. And we're now up to almost 50,000 customers. We've got a balance sheet of 3.4 billion. And the pace of growth is pretty exceptional in the bank. We started the year with a 1 billion deposit base. And here we are sort of 9 months later, and we're up to 3.4 billion. So we're really growing fantastically well in the bank, and the bank's going from strength to strength. But I stopped being the COO of the bank last year to become CEO of Monument Technology, which I'm happy to sort of elaborate on a bit more and tell you all about.
Yes, please. And let us know kind of like why you've separated out the technology group.
I'm very happy to. So the basic simple story is we kept wandering into conversations with investors, financial institutions, where they basically said to us, we love what you're doing with Monument. We love the tech that you're using to drive what's going on at Monument. And then people started to say to us, well, could we use that tech to start a bank in Latin America? Or could we use that tech to start a bank in the Middle East? And then more recently, we had building societies in the UK saying, could we use your tech platform to get up our legacy architecture of 30, 40 years and more onto something modern, digital, cloud native? So after we'd heard that several times, we really recognized we were probably onto something and we ought to carve out a business to take advantage of that, which essentially means we've taken a copy of the platform that the bank uses and are using that to provide the platform and broader functionality to others. The bank continues to service the mass affluent, and as I said, is doing that brilliantly and is growing and going from strength to strength. That's its agenda. So we wanted to sort of separate the business so that the technology company can just be focused on the technology company's clients and not get distracted by the bank, and the bank not just get distracted by the technology company. And it's going great guns because I think you're well aware we've already got a first client, Ecology Building Society, who are in the process of implementing on the platform.
Oh, fantastic. So separating this thing out, it's kind of like you have to split the resources. Like who's managing the technology for the bank versus, I guess, for the technology company?
And just sort of to add in there as well, I guess, effectively Monument's now become a client of the technology.
Not quite, but let me explain, Dave, why I say that. And then I'll come back to your question in terms of resources, etc. So effectively what we said is that the bank's going to carry on with its own version of the platform and its own technology team, and it's just going to focus on its agenda. So it's absolutely the proof point for a platform that works. It's powered a regulated bank for nearly 3 years now, and it works brilliantly. But what we didn't want to do is have the bank being the first client of the technology company because, frankly, we didn't want other people saying, well, you're always going to be more worried about the bank than any of us. So we wanted to separate it out and operate it independently. That means, to Dharm's point, we're having to build a whole team in Monument Technology. And I've got a new CTO, Diptesh Mishra, starting in 2 weeks' time. And I'm building out the rest of the team. But we've quickly gone to a team of 15 people. We're supported by Persistent Systems, who have been our strategic SI partner along the journey, both as Monument Bank and now as Monument Technology. So we've got a significant number of engineers helping us in that space. But yeah, we've got to grow a whole separate business and a whole separate team. But the bank's been hugely supportive along that first stage of the journey in helping us get up and running. and giving us all the support that we need until such point in time as we've hired everybody we need to. And obviously, hire everybody at once, that takes a bit of time to get the right people on board.
So is Monument Technology becoming its own company? I mean, is it in effect its own company now? Or?
Yeah, absolutely. It was created as a company back in November 2023, started off life immediately as a 100% owned subsidiary. But we're just coming to the end of a seed fundraising right now where we'll exceed our target of £10 million. And that will mean the bank's share in the technology company will come down quite significantly. It'll be in the 50 plus bracket by the time we've finished. And Monument Technology will continue to sort of raise money independently and operate independently as part of the Monument family.
Wow, I mean, it's a bold move. I'm still kind of wondering, these people that came to you, how did they know that they should come? And like, why you and not other technology providers in the space? I mean, my background's in Temenos. Why didn't they get a Temenos?
Well, potentially for the reasons that we didn't choose Temenos when we first started out life as Monument Bank, I guess. What might be one answer to that? We wanted a modern stack, everything in the cloud, very flexible architecture. One of the things that we've done all the way along the journey is say, we're only going to develop and build our own stuff where it's really value add and differentiating. But in every other facet, we're not going to spend as much as other people will spend on their core business. So we've chosen Mambu as our core banking engine. We've chosen Salesforce to be our CRM and servicing capability, and we've customized Financial Services Cloud quite significantly in that regard. Everything's in AWS on the cloud. And so we've stitched together 20 plus best-in-class components to create the end-to-end technology stack that runs a bank, including native front-end mobile apps. And right now, even though Monument's a mobile-only bank, we are building a web equivalent of the mobile app because people like Ecology want to have both mobile and web as part of their proposition. So the answer, I think, to your first question, Dan, is that people kept seeing the fantastic end-to-end platform that we had built to run a bank and said, I don't actually see that anywhere else. I see core banking solutions. I see people with core banking solutions who cover some of the other elements of what's required to run a bank. But nobody really provides that end-to-end stack, which can be everything from, as I say, from front end through core and servicing, but can even, if necessary, include the general ledger and everything else that goes on to make a bank work. And that's why I think, and there is not really an obvious challenger to this modern and new in the environment of building societies who are savings and lending institutions in the same way that Monument is today. Clearly, there are others that are doing current accounts in this space that maybe have a sort of slight advantage over us from a current account perspective right now. But hopefully that will change as well.
So is it an eat as much as you like type solution in that, let's say, for example, if I didn't want to use Salesforce and I wanted to use my own CRM, could I just take like your core banking part and then let something else do the customer management?
I think over time that will be possible, but for the most part, you need to consume the core of the proposition. So we don't say you've got to consume everything. For example, Ecology is not going to be relying on us for a general ledger or reg reporting. They've got a perfectly good enterprise data warehouse where they'll take the data from our data lake and they'll use that to do what they need to do. We can have the platform consumed headlessly if people want to run their own mobile apps and their own web front end. Conceptually, it's possible to change the core banking in the engine in the stack or the Salesforce CRM in the stack. But right now, there's a sort of a core of it, which is sort of best consumed together. It will be my way of articulating it.
I'm kind of interested in the fact that sort of Ecology is like the first client, because I guess building societies themselves, I think, have been kind of slower to digitize their operations than the banks themselves. And certainly over the last few years, I've spoken to a few building societies, and you kind of almost get the feeling that they kind of haven't quite understood the imperative around digitization. And I guess COVID maybe have kind of changed that because they were sort of forced to deal with customers a lot more through digital channels. Do you see that industry is really sort of looking to change? It's looking to kind of embrace newer ways of doing things? Do you see it as a big opportunity, I guess?
Absolutely, Dave. And I think you're spot on. COVID clearly has changed the world in the way people engage with digital pre and post. But the world's moved on so that everything that people are doing in all of their lives is pretty digitally led. So for a building society that doesn't have an app or doesn't have a digital front end, that's increasingly hard for them to meet the needs of their members. And as they want to attract a younger membership community to them as well, then that's almost, it's table stakes, isn't it, to have an app and a web front end. So, I mean, all credit to Ecology. They were quite, I think, visionary in working out that they need to go to a modern stack and do so quickly. And clearly they weren't getting that from their existing provider. And so they've readily seen what Monument can offer them and how it can, frankly, capitalize them forward into a way that they wouldn't have imagined. And I guess it's also reflecting of one of the key features of our proposition is because we've built this end-to-end stack and it's all modern consumption-based type components, we can actually do it at a price point which is compelling and competitive for a building site in the size of Ecology. Whereas some of the other options, like trying to do it yourself, frankly, are just not viable. I often say to people quite genuinely, if you've got £20 million to spend or more and 2 to 3 years to do it, you could go off and try and recreate what we built in Monument. But actually, why would you do that when it's ready made and available and you can consume it for a much lower license fee and you can get onto that platform in less than 12 months?
Obviously, upgrading technology comes with sort of high risk as well. So there's a degree where I guess a lot of people are not very confident about these sorts of projects. Are you able to take the learnings that you've had from a kind of risk point of view at Monument and almost hold their hands in terms of what they need to be doing as well?
Yeah, I think that's absolutely spot on, Dave. We've been through that whole regulatory application process. We've had to demonstrate to the regulators that we know exactly what we're doing, and we've proven that, and we've made it work. And I, as somebody who's been the COO of a bank and then in leadership positions in other financial institutions in the past, I understand what an executive team in a building society are worried about, the whole concept of migrating from one platform to another. We've all seen in the world what happens when that doesn't go so well and the consequences. So, yeah, absolutely. And I think that's one of the things that smaller building societies look for because they don't have big technology teams in their world. They need to rely on trusted partners who can get them through this journey. And our experience, both as Monument, but also with people who have been involved in quite big transformations in other areas in their previous career, I think gives them a lot of reassurance.
I mean, do you think that's one of the reasons that they've been actually quite slow to adapt is just, there hasn't been a monument there for them to rely on?
I think that is one of the reasons why that is the case. And I think also you guys both know more about core banking than I do. So nobody sort of relishes, I don't think, the idea of a core banking migration, do they? They don't say that. That's the thing I really want to do today. But it's become a necessary part of the transformation into a modern digital cloud world. It becomes really quite difficult over time to stay on that legacy stack. I think we've also been, if I'm really honest, we've been helped a little bit by the fact that if they'd stayed with their existing provider, that would have forced them to go on a core banking migration anyway. And therefore, actually, it's prompted a lot of building societies to think, okay, well, if we've got to go about this one way or the other, and I can't speak for everybody, obviously, but I might as well go with the modern cloud native. And people who've built this and proven it over the last few years, that's a safer way to go about it.
Again, it's an interesting, this whole move to cloud native, and is part of what you're doing explaining why that's such a good thing to do, or are people there already in terms of that's a decision they've already made?
I think it's helpful for us to use it to just articulate how you can have a very flexible integration of lots of different components. Now, if you sit it in the cloud, it's much more efficient and manageable to do that. I haven't yet come across anybody when I've been talking to them about Monument technology, and I've seen a lot of resistance to cloud now. I think it's become the norm and people recognize it. And most of the alternatives that they would look to have if they were going to go and make a different purchase decision are either cloud native at best or are being transformed for the cloud as an alternative. So I think people are now reconciled. That's where they're going. I see it slightly more as a concern in other parts of the world. We're focusing primarily in the first instance on the UK, where I think building sites and small challenger banks are a very clear target market for us, and we're getting quite a lot of traction in that space. There are parts of the world where regulators still insist you have on-premise data in country and things like that. So there's some different challenges there. But by and large, cloud hasn't been the challenge that perhaps it would have been 3, 4, 5 years ago.
I'm really intrigued by your model, Steve, because if I look at it, actually, car manufacturers a long time ago decided that they're not going to have their own rubber plantations, make the tires, make the engine, make the bodywork, and make everything. They actually shifted towards a model where they in-source best-of-breed components, and they were the company that designed the outside and sourced the best-of-breed components, right? Same happened in televisions and pretty much every physical product. Why is it taking so long for like a tech provider to do this in banking? Because if I look at you're not short of competitors in this space to provide a technology platform to banks and building societies, but I can't think of many that haven't actually just built all of their stuff themselves. Why do we keep doing this in tech? It doesn't make sense, right?
Absolutely. I mean, look, as I say, when we made this decision 5, 6 years ago about our architecture, we were very clear that we wanted to use best-of-breed components for the reasons that I described earlier. But another reason was we were very conscious that the problem that exists in financial services with technology today is legacy. And we didn't want to have our own legacy emerging 5 years later. So we said, in the nicest possible way, when we chose Mambu in 2019, if you went back to 2015, most people would never have heard of Mambu. Wind forward to 2024, we might be very happy with Mambu still, and we are, I should say, just to make sure nobody gets the wrong idea. But we might have decided that there was something better that we needed to move to, or we weren't happy. So this flexibility of being able to swap components in and out over time, and in a very flexible architecture that allows you to do it in months rather than years, it was our way of thinking about how to always make sure we're getting best-in-class components. And it's a choice, as you've quite rightly articulated. Others have decided to build their own stack, or even started out like with third-party components and then decided to build their own equivalent of them. I'm only going to say that I think the alternative is better because, look, Mambu are going to invest way more than I would do in a core banking engine if I was building it myself. Salesforce are investing way more in CRM and servicing capability. Clearbank, who are connecting us to the payment systems, are going to do way more in that space than. And for us, it just makes sense to use best-of-breed components and make sure we've integrated them. And of course, that also helps when we go to customers who say, I want to retain this bit of the stack because I'm very happy with this. And for the most part, well, okay, yeah, we can integrate to that as well. Yeah.
So in terms of monument technology, are you in a position to be able to offer a license as well? So from a kind of BAS point of view, there may be people out there who are interested in actually developing a kind of banking proposition, but need the license. So are you able to do that, or is it purely a kind of platform play?
No, it's purely a platform play. As I indicated earlier, we have separated the bank and the technology company for lots of good reasons. Yes, there is a banking license that you could theoretically use in that context that Monument Bank has, but that's not where Monument Bank wants its strategy to be for how it uses its banking license. And frankly, we've consciously decided that the banking platform as a service is the place where we want to play. As you well know, there are people who are providing that BAS service where they make use of the license, and I think there's lots of use cases where that's relevant. But our clients are going to be financial services firms who are regulated in their own right, and that's where we all focus.
It's really interesting. And I guess it kind of means that from a focus point of view, you know who you're going after as well. So, that must help from a kind of sales perspective.
Yeah, I think so. We're very clear that in the first instance, as I said, there's a significant number of building societies in the UK who are many of them need a modern tech stack, and there's a number of challenger banks and even relatively recent ones who built a stack but maybe used some modern components but did it in a different way. And as they look forward, they want to migrate to something more like what we've got to offer. And then when I think about other parts of the world, there's 3,000 community banks in the US who are all potential opportunities when we decide to go into different parts of the world. We're seeing quite a lot of interest from different parts of the Middle East, and I mentioned Latin America. So whilst we're not rushing to go overseas with monument technology, I think that's absolutely where we'll get to in due course. Frankly, there's many organizations, what I describe small to medium-sized banks, building societies, credit unions, etc., who we can provide a solution for without having to worry about the larger ones, frankly, who are probably never going to consume a proposition like ours. They want to build it themselves or integrate it themselves.
There's a huge number of companies out there who, are probably exactly the right size for you. So another question I had, which is something Dharmesh and I have been pondering a lot, is how the world of kind of digital banking, digital finance seems to be speeding up. So that term AI, we've got to kind of talk about it. How are you sort of preparing monument technology for that future? Have you started using things like generative AI as part of your development process? I know that AWS, for instance, are really keen on using some of their tools and things like that for developing things. So I was just kind of interested in the approach you're taking around almost future-proofing what you're doing as well.
It's a very topical question, and clearly anybody who's operating in the tech space now will always get asked about what's happening with AI. I would say two things are true. One is it's quite early days for monument technology, so we are focused on our core proposition of delivering a solution to building societies and banks. We haven't used our own specific AI tooling yet in terms of what we're doing, but what we do get access to through best-of-breed components is, as you've alluded to there, Dave, AWS is starting to run AI as part of its services. Salesforce has got AI as part of its services in the sort of KYC AML world. So we can almost get the benefit of AI that's being used in some of our components pretty quickly. But then we'll also need to develop our own strategy for AI and the use of AI going forward as well. I think there's huge opportunities. The use cases need to be carefully, I think, thought through and defined. We'll be guided by our clients to a large extent. How do they want to see AI coming in the platform? Because a core part of our proposition is that you pay a license fee for the platform. Not only does that give you access to the platform today, but you automatically get the benefits of the new features that we add to the platform in a sort of SaaS type model. So we'll need to bring AI features into the platform, but we'll want to make sure we're doing what really matters to our customers when we do that. And the same digital bank currencies and Web3 and all those different areas, they're no doubt somewhere on the roadmap, but not the most urgent things to solve right now.
No, it's interesting. It's interesting how simply by the architecture you've got, you're kind of almost future-proofing, but also it enables you to kind of have a look at how people like Salesforce or AWS are dealing with AI for their own businesses. So, I know that agents is the word of the moment. So, and I guess that will sort of start bleeding its way into sort of propositions like yours as well, as you kind of make sense of what they're up to as well.
Yeah, we're always going to be looking for how can we add value to the proposition that we're delivering for our clients. Wherever we see either new components or new technologies, if that makes sense, we can incorporate them into the platform. Just as we're thinking about how we extend the capabilities of the platform. So as we've sort of been born out of Monument Bank, where it was very focused on savings and lending, one of the questions I get asked quite regularly is, well, do you do a current account as part of Monument technology, Steve? And I say, well, not today, but we absolutely will be adding that functionality because it's going to be needed by a group of our clients. So the good news is you can run current accounts off Mambu. N26 has millions of them running on Mambu. We'll need to integrate a card component like a Marketer or a Paymentology, etc. But again, it's a neat integration of another component we source in the market rather than having to go and build it all ourselves, which, would not be a great way to go about it in my mind. Fortunately, Diptesh, who's come from Crew in his past and having built a current account, knows what he's doing there. So I'm getting a CTO who will be really helpful.
He lived in Crew. No, brilliant. No, it's really interesting. Well, listen, we're sort of actually running short on time. It's been such an interesting conversation. I mean, as Dharmesh said, we spoke to Monument, I think, sort of almost 3 years ago. And it was interesting because it was sort of the start of the Monument journey. And I do remember there was a comment about, well, maybe, our platform will be something that we can sell. And I mean, I remember 3 years ago, and I a bit wet behind the ears around this topic. I was like, well, why would anyone buy that type thing? And here we are 3 years later, and it's sort of become a reality. So,
brutally honest, when we first started out 6 years ago, we had no thought of designing technology for anything other than just Monument Bank to use. So I can't lay claim to a grand plan when we started this back in 2018. But it's clearly become something that other people are saying they want to access. And we're in active discussions with a number of other potential clients at the moment. And hopefully I'll have some good news on that in the not too distant future. So.
Oh, fantastic.
Wow.
Fantastic. Well, listen, it's been a great conversation. Thank you so much for being so...
Thank you for inviting me on. I'm delighted to have the opportunity to speak to you guys. And I wish you a great weekend.
And you.
Okay. Cheerio.
Thank you for tuning in to Dave and Dharm Demystify. We hope you enjoyed the show. Don't forget to like and subscribe and tune in next time as we take another topic and demystify it.